Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Brady. Carlos Ghosn was the leader who turned around Renault and then proceeded to forge an alliance with Nissan, where he turned that company around, an alliance that expanded to Mitsubishi and was poised to expand even further when he was arrested in 2018 on charges of underreporting his compensation and other financial matters. 2019 staged a daring escape, which many of us may remember, to Lebanon, where he now resides as a fugitive, and filed a suit against Nissan for $1 billion. Last week, Mr. Ghosn, good to see you. I know we'll discuss more about the conditions around your arrest and what has happened since then. But let's start with the lawsuit, if you don't mind. Why now?
Well, it was not possible before because, as you probably know, when I was arrested in November 2018, they stripped me from everything. That means not only I was arrested in the airport, but immediately took my computer, my telephone, raided all the homes, all the offices that I was using across the world, took every single document that were present, which means when I escaped Japan and I arrived in Lebanon, I had nothing. I didn't have phone numbers, I didn't have my email box, I didn't have any document, any file. So it took me a lot of time, more than a couple of years, to try to reconstitute part of what I needed in order to file a lawsuit. And obviously, when you file a lawsuit of this size, you need to back it with a lot of facts, evidence, witnesses, in order to make sure that you're going to score. And the time it has taken me is due to the fact that I had nothing left and everything was so well organized against me. So, and I just remind you that they never thought I would escape Japan. I mean, when you know the scores of the hostage justice system in Japan, where the prosecutor wins in 99.4% of the case, it meant that I would probably had a 7 or 8 years trial, followed by probably a conviction on something that would keep you in Japan, which means they would tell the story the way they want it without any counter punch from my side, trying to tell my story and what I've been through. So they were a little bit surprised when I arrived in Beirut, but they knew that it was going to take me a lot of time to try to get back part of what I needed to defend myself.
You know, one thing I think we should also point out is that the UN Human Rights Council did call your 100-day detention arbitrary and unfair. So you were not alone in feeling that the odds were stacked against you somewhat. Let me ask, the fact that you are, well, first of all, you said, put together a case. To what extent have you actually been able to reconstitute the records that you had? Because you must have had to go about it very different ways, witnesses, etc.
Yeah. Well, look, I think today I got probably 30% of the information that I had before, but the 30% are so obvious, so incriminating that we decided to go ahead with it. And I just want to tell you that when I was arrested on one charge, only one. And this one was underreporting a compensation that was neither decided nor paid. So it took me a lot of time to try to understand the charge. And a lot of people thought that this was a tax problem, tax evasion, financial misconduct. They brought the financial misconduct 2 or 3 months later because they discovered that this was so fragile and so fickle that they had to add more charges. But now I think I have enough elements in order to be to make a win in front of the Lebanese justice. And why the Lebanese justice? Because when you file a complaint of this size, you have to do it in a country where the crime took place. And in fact, I had the choice between Japan and Lebanon. There was no other choice. I could not file a complaint in the United States. I wish I could, because in the United States, you would be asking for much more money for the compensation. I had to file it in Lebanon because I knew that I had zero chance of getting any outcome in front of the Japanese system.
So the amount you're suing for, 588 million, is with regards to the compensation, or also some of the, I believe, stock holding such, and then 500 million of that is more punitive damages. That 588 million to me raised the question: do you have full access to what you earned over your career to this point?
Yeah.
And how much access do you have?
Yeah, well, when you're a CEO of a company, your compensation is known. Everybody knows exactly how much money you make, how much stock options you have, how many free shares you have. On top of this, I added everything it cost me to defend myself. I have, when I was bailed out the first time and the second time, I think I was the individual who in Japan paid the highest bail ever as an individual. So when you add all of this, well, it comes to a hefty amount of money. So this was about not only compensation they took away from me, share they took away from me, but all of the costs that I incurred due to the plot that they organized against me. Now, when we're talking about punitive damage, which is another 500 million, this is because this is what is allowed by the law in Lebanon, which is a little bit more than 100% of what you've lost. You would be in the United States, the punitive damage would be much, much higher. That's why, but I could not file in the United States because I'm not an American citizen. I was not practicing in the United States, not an American company. That's why I had to limit myself to Lebanon.
Did you feel undercompensated? I know, relative to Japanese executives, you were paid extremely well. Relative to somebody like Mary Barra, for example, of GM, you were receiving far less compensation than some American CEOs. How did you feel prior to your arrest, just to give us some context around compensation?
Look, when I was hired by Nissan in 1999, they knew I was not Japanese. I knew that I was a global executive coming to rescue them and help them revive the company. This was not a surprise. I'm not a Japanese executive living in Japan, going to retire in Japan. So they knew I was a very particular, singular person. I was, and I'm probably still is, the only foreign CEO in a large Japanese company. And this was admitted. That means since 1999, everybody knew that I had a much higher compensation than the other Japanese CEO. And the only reason they accepted that is because they couldn't find a Japanese CEO to turn around Nissan. I just want to remind you that before me, there were 2 tentatives to turn around Nissan, which all of them have failed. And you can imagine, for a country as proud as Japan is, and for people who are as nationalistic as the Japanese are, that calling a foreigner to save one of their major companies is not something very easy for them. They've done it not out of love or sympathy, they've done it out of need. So what is interesting is when I decided to reduce my compensation in 2009 and in 2010, following the financial crisis, a lot of Japanese executives were very worried, and they said it that I would leave the company. Particularly, I remind you that Steve Ratner, who was nominated by President Obama to be the car czar in the United States, made a proposal to me to become the CEO of General Motors, and I refused to take the job, not because I was not interested, but because I thought that leaving the ship in a period of turmoil was not acceptable for me. So that's why I stayed. So all these circumstances explain the fact that I was not totally happy with my compensation, having a job which was particularly difficult. I was a CEO of a Japanese company, at the same time, the CEO of a French company. I need to travel between two continents all the time. Uh, at the same time, working on the synergies between the two companies. So it was a very complicated job. So when you have a very complicated job and you are compensated much less than people doing the same job but with less complexity, there is some kind of frustration. That's why there was this worry and a lot of tentatives from my Japanese colleagues who say, don't worry, we know what you're doing, and we'll try to find a legal way to compensate for the future by, maintaining you after retirement, active, and helping the company. This whole thing has been explained. But the most worrying thing is when I was arrested, this was done in a way which not only did not respect my own rights or my own past or my own performance record, it did not respect the interest of the shareholders of Nissan. It did not respect the integrity of the brand. It did not respect the company itself. That's why this raised a lot of suspicion about why you're doing that, why you're doing it this way. You could have done it in a completely different way, particularly if you are conscious that you have a responsibility toward the shareholders of Nissan, toward the employees of Nissan, and toward the future of Nissan. And that's what we are bringing in this lawsuit, that I'm trying in this lawsuit to get back my rights and to right the wrong which has been done to me. But I can tell you that the wrong which has been done to the shareholders and to the employees is still not corrected. And I hope that one day they will be able to put the people responsible of this in front of their responsibilities.
I do want to talk about the alliance because obviously it continues today, and I'd love to get your thoughts on where it is. But let me just first, you talk about the discomfort that people had with your leadership being a major factor in what, was, you're saying, are politically motivated charges. I know you were a hero at one point. There was a comic book done about you. When did you sense it turned? I mean, did you, in retrospect, I know it was seen as sort of the alliance was, uneasy, I suppose is the right way to describe it. Did you sense that there was a resentment against you prior to your arrest?
In fact, I think the problem started with the famous Florence law that the French have voted in 2015, where they've given double voting rights for the shareholders owning the share for more than 2 years. And as you know, the French government had 15% of shares in Renault, and Nissan had 15% of shares in Renault. So, and Nissan was denied the voting rights. So you ended up having, between the French state and Nissan, equal shares in Renault, but the French state having double voting rights and Nissan having zero voting rights. This was the start of the problem. A lot of executives in Nissan were really shocked by the attitude of the French state refusing to Nissan the right to vote. And obviously they shared this with the Métis in Japan. And, this is where the trust started to be lost between Nissan from one side, Renault from the other, between the Japanese government from one side and the French government from the other. But no action was taken in 2015, 2016, because frankly, I fought as much as I could the Florence law in France. But when in 2018, my mandate was renewed in France as the head of Renault, and the French government said, yes, we are supporting the candidacy of myself as the head of Renault, but on the condition that he makes this alliance irreversible. Then some doubts started to show in the mind of many Japanese executives, the most conservative one, and also at the level of the Métis. And I think they came to the conclusion that if they want to stop this train, where we would go for not a merger, but a quasi-merger with the French government still shareholder of this big entity, that the best way to stop the train is to get rid of me. And in fact, they've been very successful because when they have arrested me and they knew that I could not defend myself or try to counterattack in front of this plot, they got what they wanted. Today, when you see the new agreement between Renault and Nissan that has been accepted from both sides, including from the French government, Nissan is getting back its voting rights at 15%. Renault will be voting only with 15%, and the rest of the share that they have, they'll put it in trust. So at the end of the day, what could have been resolved peacefully before 2018 was not possible without the plot and the coup that the old boys in Nissan organized, I would say in collusion with the Métis, to try to put me out of the game and in a certain way square their conflict or their quarrel with the French government. And frankly, they were successful. But this was on detriment of the performance of Nissan. At the end of the day, what you see is Nissan is going back slowly but surely to what it was before 1999, with the same problems, and in my opinion, with the same outcome.
Well, let me, before I follow up, same problems being what? How would you describe the problems today that you're seeing?
Well, frankly, I think when you compare Nissan in 2023 to Nissan in 2018, 2018 Nissan was part of the largest automotive group in the world, working hand in hand as a partner with Renault, with Mitsubishi. And you can say it, I was preparing to have Fiat Chrysler joining this alliance. We had advanced talk with John Elkann, and we have planned a meeting in January 2019 to finalize the agreement. Unfortunately, the people struck in November, and this had to be cancelled. So when you compare the revenues of Nissan, the cash flow of Nissan, the profit of Nissan, the share of Nissan, I would say the stock price of Nissan in 2018, you compare it to today, the revenues, the sales, the cash flow, the profit, and the level of the share, and particularly when you compare it not only to Nissan in 2018, but also to Toyota or to Honda in 2023, you can measure in a very, very concrete way how much the company declined. And on top of this masquerade of an alliance that they are talking about today has nothing to do with the depth and the seriousness and the intensity of the work which existed between the three companies in 2018. Today we have a facade of an alliance, and the last, frankly, chapter was this conflict, this very, strange conflict between the CEO and the COO, where the COO was defenestrated without any shareholder. I think the shareholder meeting took place today. I was reading the report made by Nissan Motors. It's interesting that there was not one single question about why the COO left the company. There are not one single question about the lawsuit I was bringing against the company. And which was the most interesting is they said that there were 243 shareholders participating to the meeting, while I can tell you that when I was the CEO of the company for 19 years, I had an average of 2,000 shareholders participating, which means it was a kind of organized show made in a very disciplined way in Japan, where there was zero transparency about all the struggles and the conflicts and the problem existing inside the company.
So let me ask about, one of the things that has come up as one of the mistakes that the company said it made with regard to is this cult, what they call a cult of personality. In retrospect, do you feel there was a cult of personality around you at Nissan Renault?
Well, frankly, first, talking about cult of personality in Renault or in France is just humoristic, because you know how the French are very critical about anything that looks like power or like hierarchy. Now, from Nissan, if there was a cult, it was created by the Japanese. I didn't participate to it. It started because I was the only foreigner. I was the only foreigner bringing results, turning around the company, and feeling at ease in Japan. So I became a very singular face. I had no other ambition in Japan, so I don't know why I would cultivate a cult of personality in a country which was not mine, and where I was intended to retire, because as you know, in 2016, I handed over the CEO job to Hiroto Saikawa to be able to rescue Mitsubishi and work on Mitsubishi. So this whole character assassination that was organized when I was arrested, where they show me as a greedy dictator. That's a little bit the summary that they made, was frankly just laughable, because of a simple thing is I couldn't be a dictator in a country which is not mine. My only weapon was my performance and the fact that people wanted to vote for me and wanted me to continue. The cult of personality was more due to the fact that I was a very singular face in Japan, not similar to any other CEO in Japan. That's what made me very special. But frankly, the rest of it doesn't make any sense. You know, a CEO is voted, in Japan we're voted every 2 years. In Renault also we're voted every 4 years. The two companies knew that they had the same CEO. If they were unhappy with it, they could have voted against me without me being able to retaliate. And again, I was not a big shareholder. I was not imposed on anybody. If I stay heading these two companies, it's because it was to the benefit of them. And they voted for it, and they have accepted it for 20 years.
How would you frame the charges that have since come down from France? I know there was some SEC as well, I believe, that were settled. But how can you give me a sense of where that fits? And are you planning maybe a similar suit against Renault?
The French received, when I escaped from Japan, arriving to Lebanon, instead of the Japanese sending my file to Lebanon, because they know that Lebanon, like France, like Brazil, do not extradite their citizen. Instead of sending the file, if it was so solid, to Lebanon so I could be judged there, they sent it to France. So what we are seeing today is for the most serious charges, all of them are coming from the Chinese file. So in a certain way, we are in front of a scheme in which the French justice system is just taking the relay from the Japanese system in order to try to prosecute me. But again, Lebanon do not extradite their citizens, so if really they want justice to be done, they will have to transfer the file to Lebanon in order for me to be judged there.
So it's based on incorrect information that was sent from Nissan over to Renault. Is that the right way to characterize it?
Look, you know the way these happen. The most serious accusation. Obviously, I'm not talking about accusation which is frankly not very serious, but the most serious accusation are coming from documents that they were stolen, because this is the way we qualify it. This is the way an inquiry that has been done in Lebanon has qualified them. They were stolen from my office in Lebanon by Nissan employees, and then given to the Japanese prosecutor. Now, in some countries, stolen documents can still justify a prosecution. But the problem is not there. The problem is when you have a party which is stealing documents from you, you have no guarantee that they did not truncate these documents, they did not manipulate them, they did not add to them, they did not change them. And they are taking them to a face value, even though they have been brought by the opposing party. That's the most difficult part that I think will not stand in front of a judge. A judge in a system which is a democratic system, where the judge is free from the prosecutor and have to make his own opinion. And this is something that obviously will be tried in France if the French do not accept to transfer the accusation or the prosecution to Lebanon. I don't think it will stand in front of any judge, not only because the documents were stolen, but second, but usually when you have a warrant, is to go and search for a home or an office, is to guarantee the objectivity of the information you're giving. Now, if you have your opponent coming, sending his own employee, taking document and attributing whatever they're going to give to the prosecutor to you, there is a big doubt about the integrity of this information. And these are the most serious accusations coming from this fact.
Yeah. Do you talk to your former peers in the industry at all, both within, the alliance and outside?
Yeah. I talked to, first because a lot of leaders of the industry were in my team, as you know, people that have been growing for a while. I have also a lot of information from inside the two companies, people voicing their frustration or talking about all the things that from one side Renault or Nissan are missing in the opportunities offered by the industry. Yes, I'm still made aware. I don't spend too much time on it, but yes, I'm aware about what's going on.
Yeah, I'm curious. There's so much talk here in the auto industry about, of course, the energy transition. This move into electric vehicles. You were one of the early movers with the Nissan Leaf. I would just love to get your perspective on that right now, even, if you were in charge or what you learned from that experience.
Look, we, in 2009, I announced that we would be launching the first mass-marketed electric car in the world, and we did it with the Leaf, followed by Zoe for Renault. The only other person who really believed in it was Elon Musk with Tesla. That means we were the only two guys fighting all the fashion of the hybrids and the very efficient internal combustion engine. Now everybody moving to electric car, and I think it's irreversible. And the smartest people recognize the fact that they were wrong by disdaining the electric vehicle technology, Volkswagen. I remember the CEO of Volkswagen at that time said that this is ridiculous, this will never fly. And when I see that Volkswagen massively investing in electric cars, that means they have made their mea culpa and they said, no, we were wrong, we're going to turn it around. So the industry is changing, new technology are appearing, new suppliers are coming, even new car makers are coming. I can tell you that one of the reasons for which the Chinese car industry is growing so fast is because they recognize from the beginning that it would be difficult for them to compete on internal combustion engine because they have so much, in a certain way, they are so much behind the rest of the industry. Yeah. But on electric car, because of the laziness of the global car maker to move to electric car, they're starting on par. And starting on par, it's a very good opportunity to be able to compete. And today the Chinese are between the largest maker of electric cars. So what we are seeing today is that there was a decision to be made as early as possible, 2008, 2009. Some people I think, unfortunately, Renault, Nissan have taken a lot of delay into this because, again, the same thing I'm hearing from a lot of people inside Renault and Nissan. They are indecisive. They don't take the right decision. They are afraid. They are closing down. They're afraid of growth. They said that I was growing the company too fast and that they have to reduce a little bit the speed. But in fact, they're reducing the speed on everything, on technology, on growth, on geographical presence, on sales. And today, instead of being at the leadership of this industry, we're finding ourselves in front of three companies, Nissan, Renault, and Mitsubishi, becoming second-tier company, each one in their own country.
Do you, I feel I'd be remiss not to mention Greg Kelly, Michael and Peter Taylor, who I know helped with your escape. Have you had a chance to speak to them or any thoughts on them just to set the record
Oh yeah.
straight?
Oh yeah. I mean, I spoke to Greg since he came back to the United States many times. I'm in contact with him. I've seen Mike Taylor and I didn't see his son, but I've seen Mike Taylor. He came back after he left Japan to the United States, and he was freed. He came to Lebanon. He visited me. Yeah, we talked a lot. Obviously, Mike Taylor spent a couple of years in a prison in Japan, so we talk about our unfortunate experience. Well, he spent much more time than me. I spent 4 months, but we compare a little bit the treatment and how unfair it was, and particularly for foreigners, because you're often in a prison where nobody speaks English, and you can't just have foreign medicine. You cannot have, or very hardly, foreign books. I mean, a lot of ways to make life as difficult as possible for a foreigner or even for a Japanese to be in a prison. But I'm in contact with them, and we exchange a lot. And I have a lot of respect for what they've done. Greg Kelly is probably one of the most honest and straightforward guy I had in my different teams. And Mike Taylor is a real professional.
If Japan were to drop the charges tomorrow, would you drop your lawsuit, first of all?
No, for a simple reason. If they drop the lawsuit, they have also at the same time to compensate me for everything they've done to me. Again, this is not only my request. This is you mentioned the expert of the United Nations who analyzed my case. Not only they said that my arrest was arbitrary and that all my human rights were violated, not one of them, all of them, but they also asked for an investigation about how something like this can happen in a so-called big democracy like Japan, and they asked for a compensation for me. So if they drop the charges, it doesn't mean that we're even. That they have to compensate for all the damage they've done to me, to my reputation, to my family, to my own rights. So I don't think it's equal. You drop your lawsuit, we drop the charges. No, it doesn't work like this. And on top of this lawsuit is only about the arrest. I'm not talking about the crimes which have been committed after the arrest. We're talking about how the plot was organized starting 12 months before my arrest between Nissan, some executive from Nissan, and the prosecutor, and with the complicity of the Métis, at least, in the Japanese government. And the day I was arrested, the simultaneous raids that they've done in Holland, in Brazil, in France, in Lebanon, and in Japan, but only in Japan they had a warrant. Everything where they went into the house by, saying, okay, we are Nissan, we're coming to the house of the boss, and people let them go in. The crime was committed there. There is already a lot of crime there in front of the Lebanese law. It would be in front of the French law or any other jurisdiction. But we're not talking about the crimes that they committed after that. We are limiting ourselves to this part of the equation.
Would you go back into the auto industry? I mean, I'm curious about if, again, you were free to leave Lebanon, if you could move about, knowing that there wasn't a warrant out, what would you do?
No, look, frankly, I continue to do what I'm doing now. Is I'm advising a lot of startups and suppliers of the industry, even from time to time, automakers. So I will not take the lead of any organization, but I'll be ready, because I'm passionate about this industry, to help give an advice for people who want to steer their company to the best future possible. There are a lot of revolution taking place in the industry. It's not only about electric cars, it's about connectivity, it's about autonomous drive. There are plenty of technology, and now with the development of artificial intelligence, and particularly of the very powerful computer arriving, this is going to bring another wave of changes for on mobility. It's fascinating what's taking place, and obviously a lot of young people wanting to contribute to this revolution often need somebody who has a long experience of the industry to try to help them avoid mistakes and from time to time help them in their choice of the path to take.
You mentioned Elon Musk. I'm curious what you think of his trajectory. I don't know if you've had a chance to speak to him, but obviously he's in a very different place in 2023 than he was in 2009.
Oh yeah, well, he's in a different place, and I'm also in a different place than I was in 2009. So that's how life is. No, I think, look, he made a lot of bets. They are winning bets, and he's just pursued them relentlessly, and he's getting the fruit from very bold moves he made. But in a certain way, he was more persistent because he created his own company. I didn't. This was my mistake. I would have at that moment created a startup about electric cars or batteries. I would be in a completely different position. No, but good for him. It's bringing a lot of innovation needed in society. Deliver a lot of rewards, and these are rewards which are well deserved.
I want to end by just acknowledging the impact that this has had. You talked about shareholders, but how has it changed your mindset? Either looking back on what you did for the alliance, I guess it still exists. Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi. It did not expand, but the alliance is still there today. How is your mindset changed?
Look, frankly, my opinion is the alliance exists as a facade, but really what I know they are doing today is not even 20% or what we used to do in 2017 or 2018. And it shows in their results. You just look at the bottom line. And the bottom line, you have a decline of the bottom line, you not only of the decline of their own performance, but also because the synergies were wiped out. There is not so much collaboration between the companies, and for a very simple reason, trust disappeared. In a certain way, this whole story started because, frankly, the Japanese did not trust anymore the French, starting with the French government. And this percolated on Renault. And then after what they've done to me, I think the French do not trust so much the Japanese, which I can understand. So how do you going to maintain a collaboration which should be, which is already difficult because you're talking about two very different culture on different continent with the countries with different history, very, very proud. How you want to maintain a collaboration when trust disappear and there is so many skeletons, hidden skeletons and bad memories? I think it's going to be very, very difficult to maintain it. And in my opinion, the divorce is written on the wall because if you are not collaborating together very tightly, I don't know why you'll have cross shareholding. Shareholder would be entitled to say, why are you immobilizing all this money? You better sell the shares and go your own way. But if you go your own way, you're back to the second tier or the third tier automaker.
Yeah. And certainly it's had an impact on you and your family as well. I'm sure it's been a very difficult time.
Devastating. Devastating. Yeah. But again, what doesn't kill you make you stronger.
Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And I appreciate a lot of people wanted to hear your views on this, so I appreciate you sharing it with us.